Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the FPL Variance podcast. Today with us, we have Zeeshan and FPL Tips. We're going to discuss a lot of dilemmas ahead of Game Week 28. But first, let's welcome Z. How are you?
I'm great, Anshuman. Not a very high scoring game week, but yeah, not too bad at all.
Yeah,
And looking
100 is
forward
not a
to.
bad score, to be honest. Not very high scoring as well.
Yeah, I actually didn't even hit 100. I hit 82 because I did not have the Brentford and the Brighton defenders. But again, it's not that bad. It's very much close to the average. So yeah, looking forward to the things that we have in store today. And before we move ahead, just a quick shout to our sponsors, Fantasypedia. Uh, you have to check out their Twitter handle. They put up some amazing stats, a lot of good insights that can help you get a lot better in FPL. So check them out on Twitter, give them a follow. And yeah, we're always here if you fancy regular podcast content. What do we have in store, Anshuman?
So we're going to discuss our popular dilemmas in terms of forwards. Do we sell Haaland or not? There's the Chilwell debate and the Chelsea assets comparison. We have a lot more content on Leicester. I think they're going under radar and captaincy as usual. So some more topics that we cover throughout the podcast, but those are the major talking points of this game week.
Yep, very excited. Let's get started. Let's get started with the forwards, obviously, and the guy that scored 5 goals in the Champions League recently. But there is a case that he should be taken out of your FPL teams, and we have some options lined up as Haaland replacements. So yeah, we've got the likes of Watkins, Havertz, Felix. Do you think, first of all, would you agree that it's okay to get rid of Haaland for maybe 2 3 weeks? And if yes, who would be your preferred option to replace Haaland? Yeah, I think that logic is
Just a
very
second. I think
sound.
just a second. I think that I spoke that on mute and my audio. Yeah, so I was just saying that I'm firmly interested in selling Haaland just because I'm getting two fixtures, extra fixtures in terms of hold instead of holding Haaland, and I'm gaining nothing up in terms of holding Haaland. If I sell him, I gain rank, and that's the essence of it. So I'm looking at gaining rank and selling my Haaland to someone explosive like Havertz or Watkins at this point.
Yeah, and it's almost a guarantee of floor. Like you said, that you're looking at a Haaland who blanks this game week, and he's got Liverpool up next, and it's essentially a floor of 2 points. Whereas if you're taking him out for someone like a Watkins or a Havertz, you're looking at a floor of at least 6 points, and any return that they get, let's say just one goal, and it's suddenly getting up, more than 10 points in the next couple of game weeks. So yeah, let's sort of deep dive into it. Obviously, Watkins is there and Havertz is there. Who would be your preferred pick out of these? Personally, I'm very keen on Watkins, and it's just the fact that he's probably their go-to man. Aston Villa, a lot of chances that they create, it falls to him. The manager is sort of hyping him up, and he's talking about how he is working hard on improving his goal scoring in recent weeks. But Havertz, on the other hand, he's got very similar numbers, also potentially on penalties. So where do you stand out of these two?
So I'm firmly in the Watkins camp at this point, only because of the fact that the defenses he faces are one of the worst defenses in the next 4 games. I think the Aston Villa team is somehow now constructed in a way that they're going to supply a lot of the ball to Watkins, expecting him to score. He's also been training specifically for goal scoring. He's also been training to specifically take penalties as well. He could potentially take the penalty. He's not on penalties. Bundia is first choice, but again, he could be at the end of penalties if Bundia chooses to give it to him, like it happened in the Everton game. So I'm particularly looking at Watkins because I think also form is a very big factor here. He's probably one of the most informed players. He's also a top. He's in the top 5 or 6 in terms of XGI in the last 4 or 5 games amongst all players. So Watkins putting up the numbers, he's looking in form, and that is what really matters to me. My case against the Chelsea boys is one that we are not that set yet. So You look at Leicester, and obviously people are basing this on the fact of the last two games, one of the Champions League games and the Leicester games, and even the Leeds game. Yes, we look better, we look in better state, we look in a better form, but it's not going to be very easy. Everton is a cagey game. Liverpool could be very cagey as well. I think Villa could also turn up. If they turn up, it could be a very cagey game. That's the problem with the Chelsea assets for me. And as a Chelsea fan, I'm not very optimistic of us getting a lot out of these games. Maybe a win is fine. I think a 2-0, 3-0 win. Again, to not even 3-0, 1-0, 2-0 win is fine, but I'm not very optimistic of us going big.
What are your thoughts in terms of Havertz and his minutes? Do you think his minutes are secure? Because obviously we're looking at Chelsea these days, and they've not been very consistent in the league. So I don't think they are in the in that race for top four, right? So not a lot to play for in the Premier League, but in the Champions League, all their attention. I'm sure Potter will be looking at Champions League, and he'll probably back himself depending on whatever draw they get. But that's a different conversation. From an FPL perspective, do you think Havertz his minutes could be affected because of the Champions League factor?
So at least in the next two game weeks, we know there's no Champions League, and he should be starting those two game weeks. And he's pretty much nailed in terms of irrespective, even with the Champions League. I think he's pretty much nailed. I expect him to, even if there's a Champions League, I expect him to play 180 minutes around the week, and it wouldn't be a problem for Havertz. So I think minute size is more secure than Felix at least. Felix, on the other hand, could be a player who's dropped just due to minutes, not because of form. And also, that's a big difference between the two, and that is why Havertz is more popular. Just apart from that, Havertz's position in the pitch is much more better than Felix. Felix is in a 4-2-3-1. He was much more attacking. He was more central and attacking. But in a 3-5-2, he's dropping way too deeper to connect the play, and that is why I think Havertz, in general, between the two, I'm not even considering Felix, is because of the minutes and the position he's playing at the moment. And he's also not in form. He's been very unlucky. He's like Embo from last year. So that is why I'm not even considering Felix. But it's between Havertz and Watkins for me.
Yeah, I think I'll pretty much agree. Obviously, we've also got Felix as an option out here on the screen, and he's got reasonable data. Some of the data is as good as Havertz, but like you said, it's just that edge in the attacking burst, that instinct to maybe score a goal. And obviously, Havertz himself is not a great goal scorer, but I think from an FPL perspective, he's more likely to get you returns than a Felix. Also, the fact that he has penalties, and in the short run, I think it could pay off. But I think Watkins is a much better option. And you know, you spoke about how he's playing the three worst defenses in the league very soon in the next upcoming fixtures. Hopefully, he continues to keep penalties, and Buendia continues to be kind to him. But even apart from the penalties, I think Watkins is clearly. I won't even look at Felix personally. I think it's just these two. If you want to look at a Haaland replacement at all, I think it has to be number one Watkins, number two Kai Havertz.
So just wanted to add, there are two shouts that people are very interested. One is Isaac. I'm not very interested in him because yes, Eddie Howe said that he's first choice, but again, I don't think he's very nailed with Wilson lurking around. Secondly, Newcastle are not the best attack, so it's not the best investment in comparison to someone like Watkins or in Havertz, where the teams are averaging about 1 xg per match, over 1 xg per match. The other option is something I'm very interested and keen and looking at the moment is Ian Acho. He is not nailed in terms of minutes, and Brendan Rodgers could actually sub him off or not even play him at all, given any point in the game. That's the only caveat and downside to any Nacho. In terms of comparison to stats, he's better than all three options listed here. In terms of fixtures, they're at least equal, if not better than all three players here. So I think that's a good punt if you can afford like a benching, and if you're okay with the benching or a sub off, early sub off, but the upside is there as well. I think if you're chasing upside, Iheanacho is absolutely there in the list.
I think Isak could have been a good shout, but to me, that something that puts me off him is the fact that if you look at these other strikers, their alternatives are players who are not that great in terms of quality. But his alternative is actually Callum Wilson, who is also a very good forward. So if Newcastle are chasing the game, they're 0-0 after 65, 70 minutes, and Howe wants to mix things up, he will not hesitate to take Isak off, because Wilson is, I would argue, as good or maybe even better than
Probably even better, yeah.
Isak. So I think it's just a matter of time that yes, Howe has said that he's safe for now and all that, but I think it's just a matter of time because before Callum Wilson becomes first choice, either in place of Isak or they could both play. But yeah, I think that sort of puts me off Isak. Kelechi Iheanacho, I think he's a good player, but again, historically we've seen for some reason Brendan Rodgers does not like him a lot. He's almost feels like that he's looking for an excuse to bench him or cut off his minutes, which is very strange considering that every time he gets minutes, he's been very consistent for them. But again, I think if you're looking at a replacement, I think it has to be a Watkins or a Havertz. Maybe Kelechi is an outside shot, but I'm not very sure to be honest.
Yeah, I agree and agree. And that's a good segue into one of the other assets that we're looking in general, which is also from Leicester. So just before we dive into that, again, for both of us, I think it's the top three order is Watkins, Havertz, and then Iheanacho, if I'm correctly stating it.
Yeah, personally, I'll just keep it down to two. I will not even look at a number three. I think it has to be just number one Watkins and number two Havertz. It's just asking for trouble. I think going for someone like Iheanacho, whose minutes are not secure long term, and the whole point of getting a player with a double game week for me is that he gets 180 minutes, or if not 180, he gets at least 130, 140, 150. But with him, there's always that doubt that he may not get a start. So and he's not a Haaland, he's not a Salah that you'll be comfortable that okay, it's fine if he's coming off the bench against tired legs, he may get a return here and there. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not too keen. Is just Watkins and Havertz for me.
Okay, from going from one Leicester asset where I'm very keen of, the second Leicester asset I'm also very keen on is probably a player that everyone is interested in is James Maddison from Leicester. I think he's one of the most popular midfielder at this point in the game. He's been putting up good numbers. Also earlier in the day, the England squad was released and he's in the England squad as well. So the injury concern doesn't look serious, even if there is a knock or something. I think he's looking fit. Although he's been carrying some injury in the last few games, in the few weeks, but look at his numbers. He's been averaging one big chance involvement per 90. He's been putting 3.72 shots per 90. His penalty area touches is really nice. So the numbers are there. The involvements are obviously less. He's been underperforming his XG and involvement. What do you think about this, Z?
Yeah, I think you mean he's sort of overperforming. If you look at his overall data,
Yeah.
his xG is a lot less, and he's scored more number of goals, which I think is fine. And this is a point that every time there's a Maddison discussion, people talk about, oh, he's overperforming. I don't think that's really a cause of worry. It's just that the kind of player that Maddison is, that Leicester as a unit, as a team, they're so reliant on him that every time they're looking at something, they want to create something on the pitch, they give the ball to Maddison. Also, the fact that yes, his penalty area touches for a central midfielder is actually very good. Uh, he is taking a lot of shots in the box as well, but he likes taking a pop from distance. So he likes that odd shot from distance outside the box, and I think that is one of the contributing factors as to why his underlying data, right, is a bit less compared to his actual output, because obviously if he's shooting from distance, he's the underlying data is not going to be that great. So I don't think it's a negative. I think that's a positive. And if you look at his overall data and just the fact that Leicester are so reliant on him, I think is a really fine option. Uh, I'm not sure if I'll be looking at him this particular game week, because if you're looking to take him out, who are you going to take out? Are you comfortable taking out a Brighton midfielder? Are you looking at taking out an Arsenal midfielder? So that is one dilemma. So where do you stand on this, Anshuman? So let's say if you want to take someone out, are you looking at Maddison for this game week, or will you hold it out and maybe get him in 29 instead of 28?
So this is the exact same dilemma I had this game week for my team when you look at my team. But I'm not. When you look at the fixtures, they have good fixtures. Leicester play Brentford, Crystal Villa, and I think Southampton or Bournemouth in the next four. And it looks on paper they look like a good fixture run for them. But my only problem is I don't want to remove a double game week Brighton asset for Maddison this game week. I can't remove an Arsenal asset because they have a fixture. So I'm very much interested in buying him in 29 for a Martinelli and not for a Brighton asset this game week, because again, people could argue that going for Maddison this game week ahead of a Brighton asset gives you an extra fixture. But again, it's down to the fact that Brighton are a much more superior attack, in my opinion, in terms of Leicester. They're much more goal involved and they're scoring more goals. I don't think it's a classic example of going fixtures over actual form and numbers, and you shouldn't go there in terms of number of fixtures. I think even in two fixtures or a less fixture than Leicester, Brighton assets can outscore Maddison, and that is why I'm holding this move off till next game. We can probably get him for an Arsenal asset.
Yeah, I think I'm totally on board with that, and this is why I've seen Twitter this week, and I find it very surprising that people are comfortable taking out Brighton midfielders for Maddison, which I think is a ridiculous idea. I think it stems from the fact that people tend to think, oh, it's just Brighton, but we've discussed Brighton a lot in the past. We've looked at the underlying data. They are not just Brighton; they are Brighton, a team that is very consistent, very attacking, and they're playing some of the best football in the leagues. And I think there could be a bias because of their price as well. These are mid-priced assets, 5-6 million. But I think it's time we look beyond that. Don't look at their price. Don't look at that image that you have that, oh, it's just Brighton. Brighton are actually a very consistent. I think they're one of the top sides in the Premier League now. And the kind of fixtures that they have in 29, I think they're a firm hold. If you want someone like Maddison, I think you just have to wait it out. And if you can get him this week, but it doesn't have to be in place of a Brighton midfielder. I think it's a firm hold.
I agree. I agree. And you probably ought to wait it out. And I think that gives you enough time as well because over the injury international break, since he's carrying an injury, since he's involved in the England squad, it will give you enough time to reassess your move. In case if he's injured, you'll be forced to move him out post the international break. And that's the worst thing you want in life. Brentford at home are also decent defensively, so it could be a case where he's not. Leicester don't score a lot of goals in general as well. So playing out with 10, holding your Brighton midfielder is probably the best thing you can do at this point.
Yeah, I think it could be a shrewd chess move. And like you said, the international break could be a factor. And we've seen it so many times that players like Maddison, like with obviously all due respect to him, he's not a very consistent figure in the England camp. And a lot of times players like him are desperate whenever they feel they might have a chance. So it could be a case where he maybe is carrying a knock. He goes to England, features for them, comes back with a knock, and maybe Brendan Rodgers benches him in that immediate fixture after the international break. So there are a lot of factors, these little nuances that you have to consider before you bring him in for a Brighton midfielder. So I think I'm totally on board with that. It's a great point about the international break, and I think it's worth holding on for another week, even though he's a very fine option. I think from 29 onwards, Maddison is a very good shout.
Yeah, I agree. There's another play that we're looking at from the Leicester team. Yeah, Iheanacho is only the other option that I can think of. But at this moment, I would even avoid this game week. I'll see if he's getting those minutes or if he's benched or rotated, and then 29 I can look at Iheanacho. But Leicester are something that you need to look at and keep a close eye on. Even if you have like a situation where you already have Watkins, you maybe want to let go of another forward you have, maybe just want to take a huge upside punt. I think Iheanacho really fits that bracket for me, and I think he's going under radar. Even Maddison. Maddison is still very popular in terms of everyone is looking at Maddison. I think if you're not looking at Maddison, maybe Iheanacho is a good option to go from the Leicester City team. I think he's going very, very under radar.
Yep. I think that pretty much sums it up. So Maddison is the clear standout from Leicester if you're looking to buy him, and we think he could be a good replacement for Arsenal midfielders next game, not this game. So yeah, makes sense to
Yeah.
hold on. We covered Brighton and we spoke about their midfielders. So let's move on and talk about the Premier League defenses. And again, a team that stands out to me is actually Brighton because if you look at the defensive data here, ridiculous defensive numbers. So not just Brighton, like which team's defenders do you think warrant FPL investment? And I think that we'll also talk about a couple of Chelsea defenders. But yeah, let's start with Brighton. And in general, which teams do you think should be like which of these defenders should we target from an FPL point of view in the coming weeks?
So, like, there's a question. There's a popular question. I think you need to even give your opinion on this. People are interested in selling. Obviously, the popular pick from this list is Chelsea defenders, and specifically Chilwell. For everyone's interested in getting Chilwell. And a popular dilemma is: do we sell a Brentford defender, which is a Henry, Me, or a Pinnock, or sell Estupinian from Brighton? I'm very sure and very. There's no, in my opinion, there's no debate. It has to be a Brentford defender. On paper, they might still look a decent defense, but in actuality, they've been really lucky with their clean sheets. They have not. They are an overperforming defense. eventually it will come down to line and they will concede goals, and they have been conceding goals here and there. I think Estupinian in general is also very attacking. So for me, it's very simple. I think I would sell a Brentford defender, and the Chelsea is probably the only defense worthy in investment in 28.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. So honestly, if I'm forced to sell a Brentford defender, only then I would do it because they have a fixture in 28. I think if you really want to go down that route, you probably look at someone else. Why not keep hold of both your Brighton defender and your Brentford defender? But yeah, if you're forced to sell like one of the two, then yeah. And Estupinian, I think, is a ridiculous FPL pick. And again, his data is very good. And when you watch him play, he's almost overlapping, Mitoma when they're in the final third. And I think one of these days he's going to be on the score sheet. From what I've looked at, very very attacking. And like we're looking at the short term defensive data from game week 24 to 27. Obviously, not a great sample size, but if you look at this data, Brentford are actually the best defense in the league over this period. Not only have they conceded just 2.33 expected goals, the XGC number that we're looking at, they've conceded zero big chances. So that is a sign of a very good defense. A defense that obviously does not allow a lot of chances, but allows zero, absolutely nil when it comes to the big chances conceded. So that is where they stand out to me. Obviously, City is also there, but I think we're in a situation right now where they're blanking. They don't have a double game week, and obviously, the defensive situation. There's no defender like Cancelo anymore who offers something more than clean sheets. So that means they do not warrant that kind of investment. Now, you did speak about Chelsea, and the two names that stand out immediately are Ben Chilwell and Reece James. Reece James obviously has been an FPL hero for the right and the wrong reasons in the past. Chilwell has done well recently, and I think he's a fair shout. But before we talk about Chilwell, what are your thoughts on Reece James? Do you think we we can trust him again in terms of FPL? Do you think his minutes are secured? Also, do you expect him to take penalties ahead of Havertz, or do you think Havertz is a safe penalty taker for now? What do you think?
I think the penalty shout is just a dream that may or may not come true. We don't know. I don't think Havertz will miss out a penalty so easily. And again, like after the UCL miss, and then he should continue taking the penalties. But my problem with Reece James is basically minutes. If there is any situation where we have to rotate, he'll be the first one out of the team sheet. He'll be very we'll be very cautious with Reece James because he's essential in terms of UCL. UCL is our only priority at this moment. So he's going to be prioritized there. In general, he was injured so many times. He's going to be played with very too much caution. I think, and Chilwell now is a very potent and important asset to the team in terms of attack. Everything is getting built up from the left hand side. So GMs is maybe even not that attacking. When you look at the game, he's not the James that he was last year. So apart, even if you take out the minutes and the injury concerns, he's just more central, like in terms of central, like in the middle of the pitch, not high up the pitch, and that is a problem. He's not Reece James that we knew earlier. He's more defensive this season, and I think that the trend is continuing. There's nothing that really indicates me that he's always very attacking. Chilwell, on the other hand, is very attacking. He shouts points everywhere. I think the only person I'm not even. I have two minds in terms of his attacking output and potential, but yeah, between Reece James, like this is what I think about Reece James and Chilwell. Where are you on this? So you are on free hit. So are you probably doubling up on them, or are you just going Chilwell?
Yeah, I think I have. So obviously, I have some things in my mind, and obviously, uh, that's the beauty of it, right? Of a free hit, that you can take these punts and get away with it because you're not really buying them for the long term. So I think Chilwell again is someone that really stands out to me for the reasons that you've just said, and he's very very attacking. It almost reminds me of Alonso, and I don't think he's as good as Alonso attacking wise, but he's still very very attacking. So he's almost playing as a left wing forward at times. I don't think he's even a left back. I don't think he's a good defender, and I think Potter has sort of acknowledges that, and he's using Chilwell to his strengths as someone who can provide another attacking outlet when Chelsea are in transition, when they are putting bodies forward. And like the observation that you made about Reece James, I think again it's very similar to Felix in the sense that he's a very good player, but in terms of FPL point of view, right now he's playing that inverted role where he's offering a lot of things in the build-up, but he may not be as involved in the final third, and making those actions inside the box, taking as many shots as Chilwell, for example, taking up those positions. So I'm again in a very similar situation. I think I like Chilwell a lot. Uh, I'm pretty certain he will be in my FPL team, and I may consider a double up as well, defensively. So, and obviously in a game week like this, price is not really a concern. So I think they're both at their price. I can afford them. But I think Chilwell is a must, not just for me. The people like me, I'm sure there'll be very few people on the free hit. But in general, if you're looking at your FPL team, I think he's a pretty secure pick. You obviously mentioned earlier, as a Chelsea fan, you think Havertz is pretty secure when it comes to minutes. You
Yeah,
don't expect him to get rotated a lot. What are your thoughts on Chilwell in those regards? Do you think he
same.
may miss a game here and there?
Again, I said he's very potent and essential for our build up and attack. So I don't see him getting dropped unless it's very essential. And it's a 3-5-2 situation. So if you're playing Cucurella as a left center back, who would you play as a left wing back? That's the only option we have. Ideally, so I don't think he's a minute. He's probably very nailed on in that term.
So again, that is again very encouraging. If Chelsea fans and you are very sure, you're very confident that his minutes are secure. I think the upside could be ridiculous, not just this week, but in the coming weeks as well. Any other defender that sort of stands out to you? Someone who's not from Chelsea, someone who's not Estupinian, or maybe a Brentford defender, and obviously someone who's not a Trippier, because every man has Trippier in his team by now. Any other option that you would like to suggest?
So I do have one player in mind, which I think is one of the best alternatives in terms of someone is not from the top six or so, popular picks. I'm looking at Gerard Moreno from Aston Villa. I think he's one of the good picks out there who has got a shot. He's been playing essentially left wing in terms of games. When you look at his position in games, he's playing left wing, and his his essential work is to just cross the ball and put it into Watkins' path. And I think he's been doing decent, and I think he will continue to play minutes. One downside to that is he's very subbed off very early, around 60-65, usually in almost all games. So that's a very like it's an upside or a downside thing as you look at it. So if Aston Villa concede a late goal, he keeps a clean sheet always. But that could be risky because in terms when you want to chase games, you're down. He could be one of the players who subbed off earlier on. So that's the problem with Moreno. I think that he's the only one. He's the only player that stands out to me. I think from Leicester, there's nobody that really stands out. I think Ricardo Pereira has been doing decent, but not in terms of massive numbers put out. Apart from that, there's no other teams I would look at in terms of defense. Every one of us has a Brentford defender, probably a, Newcastle, Brighton defender, and everyone has a Arsenal defender. There's a case for a Newcastle double up if you want to. This week is a good chance to double up. They have an okayish, I would say an okayish double game week in 29 in terms of West Ham United. I think both teams could score against them. Again, they have a double game week later on as well. So you are fixture ahead in terms of everyone. You have one extra player there.
Yeah. I think Moreno is a good shot. Again, the only concern is that their defensive numbers they look a bit shaky. So, uh, but again, the fact that you mentioned that he gets hooked off every now and then, you're in a situation. I think it's all about getting lucky with these punts ahead of double game weeks, right? Where let's say Moreno gets an early attacking return and Villa are 2 up or something, and he gets taken off at 60, 65. You're getting a double digit haul right away. But I think that's we just in it's been that kind of a season where the defenders have not really stood out, right? Teams are leaking a lot more goals. So the fact that he could be playing left wing at times, I think that's a positive. So that's a good outside the box shout. Another team that stand out to me for not the right reasons, for all the wrong reasons, and it's a team that I've spoken a lot about in the past is NFO, Nottingham Forest. Rubbish team, terrible data, and it's been the case, all season. I think they're a team to target when we are maybe not immediately, but in the game weeks to come, we'll be looking at a lot of double game weeks, and any team that is playing NFO, I think their attacker immediately becomes a good captaincy shout. So we'll try to identify the trends in the coming game weeks if there could be patterns, and obviously Fantasypedia does those chances created threads as well. So I think I have big hopes from Nottingham Forest in terms of they could be the team that we should target going forward. But yeah, I think this defensive data tells a lot of
And
different stories. And
that's the
yeah,
case with Watkins as well. So when you look at the top four weakest defenses, as which is Nottingham Forest, Leicester, Everton, Bournemouth, Watkins faces three of them in the next 4 games, in the next 3 game weeks, in the next 4 games. So if you're in terms of getting a nailed on attacker who has good fixtures, decent numbers, looks in form, that is why Watkins stands out for me. Even Chelsea have like a good opposition. They face Everton, which are okayish. Then they face Aston Villa, which are sixth worst defense. Everton are third worst defense. Then they face Liverpool, are also away from home, are very bad, and they're the sixth worst team away from home. So Chelsea also have fixtures, not denying it, but I think the fact that what everything is put forward and put on plate for Watkins, it's like everything is directed to Watkins, and he's in form, is something that swings it for me.
yeah, I think Watkins is good. It's interesting that you mentioned Liverpool, and I have two Liverpool defenders, and I'm looking at this data, and I'm not very happy. And Havertz and Haaland both will be up against Liverpool very soon. They've conceded just one goal, but they're overperforming a 4.32 XGC right now, and that is ridiculous. And I know we keep, hyping up Allison and how good he is, but I think even someone of his quality cannot like help Liverpool when the defensive data is this bad. I think a team of Liverpool's quality should be doing a lot better, and these are not. I mean, this has me really worried, and I've been lucky enough to get those clean sheets, but wow, I think I'll probably move on one of them after 29. Obviously, taking them out, in a double game week could be risky. But yeah, this is really bad. So if your attacker is up against Liverpool, I think that's a good sign as well.
Yep, and I don't think there's any other defender you can look at. Again, if you have to buy Chilwell this week, I'd still be looking at selling a Brentford defender over an Arsenal. I think an Arsenal single game week is better than a Brentford double game week next week, and that's the logic behind selling a Brentford defender ahead of a Zinchenko, Gabriel, or White. Estupinian has to be in your team hands down. A Trippier has to be in your team. I think the rest of the defenders play out themselves. So that is why I'm
Yeah.
looking at selling Pinnock if I had to buy Chilwell. Just to state and a humble brag that I already have Chilwell. I have got his haul for the last 2 game weeks, and I got him on wildcard. So this is not a dilemma for me, but for people who are looking at, I think I would sell the Brentford defender out there.
Yeah. So just one last thing before we end. It's interesting that you mentioned, that selling an Arsenal defender could be fine as well. If I'm not wrong, I think the 29 fixture is at home to Leeds. And so with the Arsenal defense is a very weird sort of a story, and it may sound surprising. And even I was very surprised when I looked up the stat. I think they've kept 12 clean sheets in the Premier League this season. Now, normally, defenses are very solid when they are playing at home, especially the top teams. With Arsenal, it's a totally different story. Out of the 12 clean sheets, they've only kept 3 clean sheets at home. 9 clean sheets have come away from home. That is astonishing, but that is a story. I think that is a pattern. I think it could be a lot down to the fact that Arsenal at home are always trying to attack. They're putting a lot of bodies forward, and they don't care about conceding their 1 or 2 goals because they're very confident that they could put 2, 3, 4 goals past the opponent. Compared to away from home, where they do score goals every now and then, but they're a bit more cautious, and they always have that in mind that we want to hold on to this in case it goes wrong, in case we're not able to create enough chances. So I think that ratio is ridiculous. 9 out of 12 clean sheets away from home is astonishing, and the 29 fixture is at home. So I will not be very confident about a defense that has kept just 3 clean sheets at home all season. So I think it's an easy sell. I would not be surprised if that happened. If I mean, it's a good decision if you are taking out a single game week Arsenal defender at home to maybe a double game week defender. I think it's a totally viable, because there is that you know bias that people have that, oh, it's Arsenal, they have a home fixture, their defender is a good option. No, at home, their defense is not a good option.
Just 2 points. One, would you sell a Brentford defender, or would you like sell an Arsenal defender over a Brentford defender this week for Chilwell?
This week I won't. It's purely down to the fact that they have a fixture, right? And this is one of the reasons why I'm not comfortable selling a Brentford defender as well. Just sell someone. I'm sure you've got 5 defensive spots. I am sure there will be someone else who does not have a fixture this particular game week.
So most wildcards are on two Newcastle. There's Estupinian, there's Pinnick, and there's Zinchenko. So those are that's the popular 5 I'm talking about. So out of this, you won't sell the two. Newcastle, they play Nottingham. It's an easy fixture. I don't think we're selling Estupinian. That's that. It's between Zinchenko and the Brentford defender. That is why I ask you. Would you
I
sell
would
a
keep both. I would keep both this week because they have a fixture. I think transfers are very valuable. So you might as well, just keep them this week. Next game week, I think I'll be very comfortable selling an Arsenal defender for a Chilwell. I think that's a perfectly fine move. And like we just discussed, right? The data backs it up that at home Arsenal defense is not reliable. So what are you banking on? Are you banking on another Gabriel attacking return? How likely is that? Not very likely. Zinchenko, yes, he's looked fine, but I think he lacks that killer instinct to get a 12, 15, 18 pointer. And when the defensive data at home is not that great, I think I'll be very comfortable winning off that Arsenal defender, especially for a double game week defender. So yeah, just hold on to both of them this game. We can just sell the Arsenal defender in 29. I think that should be the move.
I am not convinced here. I think otherwise, even if you have to sell an Arsenal defender, even if you're making that case, I think there's the genuine because Arsenal play at home this week again. So that's the same case. Chelsea are better at home, and they play Everton, who are a worse attack than Crystal Palace. And there's genuine upside in terms of Chilwell. You've seen the stats. So even if you're in the boat where you think that you'll hold on to the Brentford defender and sell the Arsenal defender, I think this is the game week where you take that chance in terms of having Chilwell. And also, just for people who are confused between Brentford and Zinchenko or maybe an Arsenal defender, I feel like Brentford out is a better option there because I don't think they'll keep a clean sheet against United or Brighton. So it's most likely a case where they'll concede in both the games. Wherein I think if you're looking at those stats as well, Leeds are like very bad in terms of away from home. Their approach is more defensive away from home. At home, they're more attacking. They're scoring goals. Away from home, they've not scored in the last three games as well. So I think irrespective of how Arsenal are bad in terms of defense, it's also a case where how good the opposition is, and Leeds is not a good opposition away from home. That is why I'm very confident of keeping Zinchenko as a single game week player rather than a Pinnick as a double game week player there.
Honestly, when you consider the quality of Brentford defense and obviously the defensive options, they don't really offer a lot apart from the clean sheet. So keeping that in mind, yes, I don't think there is a lot in that, right? Because even though we spoke about how Arsenal are not great at home, at the end of the day, it's just a Brentford defender, and they are likely to concede goals. So I think it could just be a case of 50-50 where they might actually end up matching each other. There could not be much in it. That's all.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I agree, but I'm still very keen on selling a Brentford defender. It's just because I don't see a clean sheet in 29. Again, 28 could not be a clean sheet as well. So it makes complete sense to me in my head that I'm selling a defender who won't be keep a clean sheet. The attacking threat is obviously a 50-50 for every centre back in the league. And that is why I'm going for a high upside fullback who's shown potential of clean sheets, who's shown potential of attacking returns. And that is the logic behind the move.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think just the way I'm thinking, it's that blanket and security of that additional fixture. And over the years, I've seen it so many times in a double game week. Classic example, last year I had Ben Me in a double game week, and he had, I think, two difficult fixtures. One of them was against Tottenham, and he actually ended up scoring, kept a clean sheet, ended up getting like 20, 21 points. It was very jammy. But the point is that you just don't know how things are going to turn up, especially when there is a blanket security of two fixtures. But I get the logic that on paper it may not be that great. That they're not very likely to keep clean sheets, and that is why I think it's fine. It's a very 50-50 situation, both with the Arsenal defender and the Brentford defender as well. Uh, I think that's about it in terms of defensive discussion. We've covered a lot of uh, players, deep dive into defensive data on most of the teams. Any final word before we move on to the captaincy discussion?
No, I don't think there's anything left to discuss over here.
Yep, yep. So yeah, let's move on to the captaincy dilemma. It's again it's an amazing game week because there's a lot of variety in terms of captaincy options. It's great that we are not forced to captain Haaland once again. So yeah, four options up on the screen, and I think they all have good data. They all have their plus points. Who stands out to you out of these four, Anshuman?
I think I'm looking at Martinelli to captain this game week. Form. The fact that it's Arsenal at home versus Crystal Palace. Crystal are conceding chances away from home. I am looking at Martinelli. I would have looked at Maddison because he's getting involved as well. But it's just the fact that I'm not getting Maddison this game week, so I'm looking at Martinelli.
No love for Bukayo Saka. He's also on penalties. Do you think
So
he could
the
perish?
thing with Saka is, I am glad that you asked me, is that he's been recently playing very wide, and I think even on the wire, the boy said that he's looking tired, which could be the case as well. But in general, he's playing very wide. He was unlucky against Bournemouth not to score or get involved because he had chances. Even against Fulham, he had chances. But I think Martinelli is playing much more central. He's taking up the central role given the situation how Arsenal are playing. Again, obviously, if I get there's okay, there won't be news. I was thinking there would be news, but they play on a Sunday. They and the deadline is on Friday. So the only downside to Martinelli captaincy is that Jesus starts and there's a 50-50 chance between Trossard and Martinelli to start. But apart from that, Martinelli is playing center. He's in form. So I don't see a reason why not to. Why can't you captain him and go to the upside there?
Yeah. Honestly, I think Martinelli is safe. And the reason why I say that is the recent tactical shift. So, not very long ago, we were discussing about how Arsenal are not looking that great. And that coincided with the fact that Martinelli, his minutes were sort of compromised and he was asked to stay wide. He was maintaining the width, he was not attacking the box as often. Now, what happened was Arsenal dropped points. Arteta was not getting the desired results, and he acknowledged that very quickly, and Martinelli was sort of given that free role. And like you said, he's playing a lot more central these days. And the fact that Trossard is now starting, I think that's again a good news for Martinelli owners. So he's playing a lot more central. Also, like the fact that he's very, very clinical. Now, some people may call it overperformance. I don't call it. I don't look at it that way. I think some players are just more clinical than others. You look at the elite players, right? You look at the likes of Salah and Haaland. It's not just the fact that they accumulate that XG, it's the fact that they can make that XG work. Now, Saka is obviously a good player and he's been a good FPL option. He's on penalties as well. Arteta, I think, uses him as a volume shooter. So his shot volume is quite high, and it's much better than Martinelli. But Martinelli is a lot more clinical. And to the fact that I was looking at again his XG data, Martinelli has the XG data of about 7.8 or something over the season, but he scored 12 goals, and it's not a fluke. It's just the fact that he's very clinical. He has that killer instinct when he's inside that box. So I think Martinelli is safe for starts. He's very attacking, so I like him. I don't think Jesus is ready for a league start yet, and something that we've discussed in the past, that he's coming back from a knee injury. He was out for a very long time. So I think in the next 2 or 3 games, he will continue to make those cameo appearances. Eventually, yes, in the long run, Martinelli, his minutes may be sort of compromised, but I think he still keeps the starts, even if Jesus is back in the frame. I think the first choice front three would be Martinelli left wing, Jesus up front, and Saka right wing as well. And obviously, Trossard, every now and then he may get a start here and there. But yeah, I think that Martinelli shout is great. Harry Kane, do you think he could be a viable option? Are you considering him at all for captaincy this week?
So I'm not like put off by him, like completely off. But the only reason that I'm not very sure in terms of captaining Harry Kane is that Southampton have tightened up their defense. They look like a team who knows how to defend, or in general putting enough bodies to defend and need to get out points. And that is the only reason I'm not very keen on captaining him, because it's just the fact that Tottenham are not very great in terms of attack, and then you're going against a team who's put up defensively solid performance in the last 3-4 games. I looking more confident. So it's just a different matchup. When you have a team who look defensively like poor, then Arsenal is the biggest and the best attack in the league. So why not captain a team is in a certain matchup like that, and why go for a Kane versus Southampton? Yes, there's historic records there, but again, in the current scenario, it's not the safest option, and I want to go for the safest option there.
That's actually very interesting because as soon as the deadline passed, and I looked at the free hit options, and I look at Tottenham versus Spurs, right? To me, this screams cash money. Like I cannot look beyond Harry Kane, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell the viewers why. Obviously the fact that you mentioned that Southampton are putting a lot of bodies behind, but at the end of the day, they're overperforming by a grade. And I spoke about how I'm worried about the Liverpool defenders from an FPL point of view because they're overperforming. The same applies to Southampton here. So if you look at the defensive data, Southampton have conceded just one goal in the last four, but their XGC is 5.32. So they are overperforming at a very high level. and I think they are due a big thrashing. If I want to, and sorry, Southampton fans, I think that could happen. And uh, yes, Kane has the historic data and all that, but that's not something that stands out to me. I don't really believe in the historic data logic, even though that's encouraging. And if you're looking for some sort of bias as someone who's looking to captain Kane, but I don't think that's because it's a totally different thing, right? Different manager, different state of play and all that. But their defensive data is not great, and they are overperforming defensively. I also looked at Kane's record away from home when he plays these teams that are bad defensively. He tends to turn up. So I remember when he played away to NFO, and that was the game where he scored 2 goals, but he ended up missing a penalty. So it should have been a 17 pointer, but he ended up with just 10 points. Another game that stands out was when he played Palace away from home. He scored 2 goals, got an assist, banked a 16 pointer. So there are these trends when Kane is playing away from home against these rubbish defenses. He tends to haul. He tends to show up, and he is on penalties as well, and that's always a crucial factor. That is why I always sort of end up backing Saka a bit more purely because of the fact that he has penalties as well. But that's a totally different discussion, and I think Martinelli is a way better shout than Saka. But Kane stands out. Like I cannot look past. There are just so many encouraging points about Harry Kane as a captaincy shout, especially in a week where captaincy will be split. Right. I think this is a great opportunity where I am very happy to back Harry Kane on my free hit as a captaincy option. I think he could go big. In fact, not just Kane. I think even a Son could do really well this particular game week. Southampton are there for the taking. I'm expecting at least 2, 3, 4 goals from Spurs. I don't know if they'll keep a clean sheet or not, but I think they're going to score a lot of goals. Uh, does this change anything for you? Are you swayed by Kane at all?
So that's the question. You're saying that Tottenham can score. You're expecting Tottenham to score 3, 5, 4 goals. But that's my question. Do you think Tottenham is that great of an attack or in form in general in terms of attack? That's my problem. Southampton look very good and they're coming back in terms of confidence. So when I see them play, you see confidence there, and that's the only thing that's putting me off. There's no reason. You remember, for people who did join us for the deadline stream, we discussed this, and I thought Kane was a great differential in against Nottingham Forest, and it paid out very well. And you agreed too, because Nottingham Forest are a certain team which is bound to concede pressure, concede chances, and Kane could score against them. Southampton are not that team, so it's not gonna be easy. Yes, Richarlison or Son could benefit more because on the counter they still press high and concede chances on the counter. I think those two players particularly are more could be end of the goals and benefit more in this game. But again, no, I'm not against Kane, but I'm not very on him as well because of the recent performances Southampton have put. Just also since you were mentioning the chances conceded and everything, I remember Fantasypedia put out the chances conceded post, and Crystal Palace are actually weaker on the Saka's flank. But as I discussed last time as well, they'd like to defend deep and they like to concede crosses, and that is why even against Brighton they conceded more shots from the opposite flank. So again, there could be a situation where you're interpreting data where they're weaker on Saka's flank and hence Saka is better. But I don't think that's the case. They will again concede more chances to shots. They'll concede more shots on the opposite flank, and that is again Martinelli stands out to me again this week.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you mentioned that because the goal that Palace conceded yesterday, even though it was Solly March who plays on the right wing, the goal came against the run of play, and the short zone was not on Solly March's natural position. It was the other side where the attack came from. So yes, and even like you said, even in the general state of play, they concede chances from a particular flank, but that should benefit the player who's on the other flank. So uh, that's
Generally,
I
yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah,
Crystal are a team who are okay with conceding crosses. They
yeah,
defend very well 1v1, and they concede crosses a lot. And there is a lot of switch of play even in the City game. If you see this De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva, or even when Foden was there in that space, they were switching a play a lot more times than off, shooting the
yeah,
ball. They're switching the play around, and then Grealish or Haaland from that side were getting more shots, and that's just a
yeah,
trend that is continuing.
yeah. And another thing, like penalty area touches per 90. Like we spoke about how 3.72 is very encouraging for a central midfielder like Maddison. If you look at Martinelli's penalty area that is per 90 is 9.24. He's an absolute monster. He likes to be in the box and he's very direct. So some players they just dribble for the sake of it. When Martinelli is dribbling, he's trying to. He reminds me of Salah in a lot of sense where even if he's dribbling, he's not doing it for the sake of it. He wants to be closer to the goal. He wants it to lead to some sort of goal scoring action. Absolutely amazing. I think he's firmly a terrific captaincy shout. But I do think Kane is a good option as well. Saka is fine, but Martinelli is the clear standout. I think he can continue to score goals, be that main man for Arsenal.
And also, if you look at data, where he's first in big chances per 90 and penalty touches per 90, but even in the other stats where he's not first, he's marginally second. XG
Yeah,
per 90 is marginally second to Kane by point zero 0.02.
yeah,
XA per 90 is marginally second to Maddison. Then chances created, yes, shots on target is marginally second, third. So there's not huge difference. He's almost there in the top spot again, as just highlighting that. So I still think Martinelli could benefit a lot to this game.
yeah. If
Again,
I
nothing against Kane, but I personally feel it's also because I trust Arsenal's attack more than I trust Tottenham's attack.
Yeah, and yeah, I think I can totally buy that. And even though like Kane is technically top for XG per 90, but there's not much in it. It's just a difference of 0.45 compared to 0.43. And I actually acknowledge the fact that Martinelli is a lot more clinical than Harry Kane. Obviously, Harry Kane is historically a proven goal scorer, and he's also a clinical finisher. But Martinelli, I think, is a lot more clinical than Harry Kane. So I don't think so if you take it with a pinch of salt, I think Martinelli's 0.43 xG per 90 is a lot better than Kane's whatever points extra it is.
Kane is
Obviously,
on
in the
penalties as well. So
yeah,
it's just, yeah, it's not non-pen XG we're talking about, it's XG. So obviously that XG where we see is inflated by the penalties Harry Kane take. Martinelli doesn't take penalties. So clearly, I think Martinelli stands out in terms of XG.
yeah, yeah. So obviously, in a single game week, a lot could go wrong, right? In terms of captaincy, maybe Martinelli ends up missing 2 or 3 chances. But I think on paper, such a good matchup. Crystal Palace are again. Sorry for any Crystal Palace fan hearing this, but they're outright rubbish when it comes to their defense. They're a terrible defense. And I think this could be another factor that could play into your hands if you're captaining Martinelli. I think Palace could try to have a go at Arsenal because it's not really working out for them. Everyone is talking about how they are not able to get. I think in the last game, it was the first time in the last 270, 300 minutes of football that they had a shot on target, which is really bad. And everyone is talking about. And I think from their intent, it was very clear that they want to prove a point that yes, we can score goals. I think that thing could play into Arsenal's hand where Crystal Palace try to have a go at Arsenal and they could end up getting punished. Could be 3, 4, 5 goals for Arsenal as well. I know I mentioned this for Tottenham, but it could be a similar situation for the Arsenal attackers as well this week.
Defensively, Crystal aren't the worst in terms of on paper in comparison to Southampton. At least when we look at the data, Crystal have just conceded like 7 big chances and 5 XG. But in
Yeah.
general, they're susceptible to good attacks. They're susceptible to conceding chances, and they've tried show defense, but like solidarity. But I don't think they're a very elite defense against a good side. They'll concede chances and concede goals, in my opinion.
Yeah. The defensive data is actually very identical. It's 5.07 for Crystal Palace compared to 5.32 for Southampton. I think they're just both. If Palace try to have a go at Arsenal, I think they could get punished.
Yeah.
Obviously, it work out for them, but it could get horribly wrong especially if they concede an early goal. And we saw what Arsenal can do. We saw it against Fulham as well. They get an early goal, they'll put you to the sword. That is the kind of attacking team that they have been this season. So it could be bloodbath.
Yeah.
We like broadly discussed 3 options here. The fourth one is Maddison, and I think even you will agree that owning Maddison, if at all you have him this week, should be enough. I don't think he's even an out of the box captaincy shout. I think that could be too much.
Yeah, I think we've discussed enough points. The fact that it could be we don't know who's going to start around him as well. So that's also a problem. Barnes is also an injury risk. He should be fine for this weekend, but again, in case he doesn't play outside, I'm not very keen on captaining Madison. I think owning him is enough.
Yeah, I think with these players, the likes of Maddison or even a Havertz or a Watkins, with their ownership and their data, I think just having them in your team is enough of a differential. For captaincy, like we've discussed, you have to look at an Arsenal player, and I think Kane could be a second favorite if you want to go a bit different. But yeah, Martin Leeds is someone that stands out to me. I think that's it. When it in regards to captaincy discussion, we've covered a lot of topics. Let's have a look at our bus teams before we call it before we wrap it up.
So here's my team. Here's how my team is looking. I have Raya and Kepa in goal, Pinnick, Estupinian, Trippier, Zinchenko, Chilwell, Rashford, McAllister, March, Saka, Martinelli, Haaland, Kane, and Tony. I have two free transfers going into this game week. One of my move is going to be Haaland to Watkins at this point. The other one is going to be a safe transfer, and I think I'm going to play only with 10 players. I don't think running behind 11 players is the ideal situation. To run behind 11 players, I'll have to let go of March or McAllister, which I'm not really convinced of because they have a great double game week going ahead. So I think playing with one less player in a game week where everyone's going to take hits around you, it's not a popular free hit game week as well. And most of the teams which even free hit will look similar to yours. So I think it's a decent game week to play with 10 players. I think I'm going to stick with that and I'm going to look at the upside in 29.
Sounds great. We look at my team, and my team is full of blank game week players, and that is the reason why I will be activating my free hit. I've not activated it yet. I've not really come up with a final free. I'll obviously post it on my Twitter like we do before the game week deadline. But yeah, this was always my plan. Like we always talk about chips, right? It's very much team dependent. So this was my plan when I played my wild card, and I was not keen to think about game week 28 at all. And that is the reason all of them blank. And I'm not worried about they'll be back with a lot of double game week fixtures in 29. But this game week, I'm very happy to play my free hit. And obviously, I'll be targeting the players that we spoke about. I'm very certain that I'll have Harry Kane. I'll have the likes of Watkins and Havertz in my team. I'm planning to go triple Arsenal attack. I think that could be a massive, differential in itself because Arsenal players are very highly owned. So getting all three of them could be a differential move. So I'm probably planning to have Martinelli, Saka, and Trossard, all three of them. But yeah, nothing is final yet. I will sort of post it on my
I've
Twitter.
made a free hit draft for everyone who's watching this podcast. So here's a free hit draft that I made up, and this is not with Z's consensus because he's going to go triple Arsenal attack. But I have Pope and Ryan goal, which I most likely start Pope. I have Pinnock, Chilwell, Zinchenko, and Trippier. And I have Alex Moreno. So I'll be starting Trippier, Zinchenko, and Chilwell if I had this team. Saka, Martinelli, Maddison, Son would be my midfield four. Tony, Watkins, and Kane would be my up top three. I think this is probably the most template free hit draft you will see overall anywhere on the internet. So yeah, this is the template. There could be a change in terms of keeping. I think Kepa could be there in some of the drafts instead of Pope or a Raya. But apart from this, I think this is the most template draft available.
Yeah, I actually think Son is a great shout, and I've not seen him in like a lot of drafts. Some of the free hit drafts that I've seen a lot of Maddison. To be honest, I've seen the Arsenal midfielders as well, but I think Son and you have included him in the free hit draft, and we spoke about him earlier as well. I think he could go
Yeah, he
big.
could benefit. Yeah.
Last game he did look fine, and I think he's coming back into that groove. So again, I'm very keen on having him as well. I think could be worth a good shout. I'm also looking at Pedro Porro, but I'm not sure how nailed he is. It's just the fact that I can have him and I could have a decent first sub because it's a free hit. So maybe have another Chelsea defender as an insurance on the bench. But yeah, nothing final. The players I'm sure about are the players that we just discussed. And I think Son is a very encouraging pick as well. So he does interest me a lot.
Yep. I
Uh,
think that's about it. We have not much to talk about in terms of other content. I think we've covered most of it this game week. Anyways, if you have any other questions, let us know down in the chat. I think we've covered most of it. Is there anything Z to
yeah.
add? Last thoughts. I think we've added most of it to the
Yeah,
pod this game week.
we're not live, unfortunately. So that was the plan, like
Yeah, that was the
to
plan. So
some
but the
questions.
Q&A, we might just go live on deadline tomorrow because it's a Friday night deadline. Very likely we'll go live then. So
Yeah.
you can
So
still keep your questions ready.
any questions like we can address it. But I think we've covered it all. It was great to be back yet again. Lovely chatting with you, Anshuman, and dumping all our FPL thoughts. I think that's it.
Yeah, that's about it. And do check out the chances created thread that Fantasypedia put out. It's probably one of the most helpful threads you'll find this game week again ahead of all the dilemmas and the 50-50s you have. Just just a point that not a lot of people consider that just because the team is conceding chances from that end doesn't mean the scorer will be on that end. It could be very likely the scorer is on the opposite end. It's not going to happen always, but look at the opposition as well. It could really help you choosing certain picks. And on that note, we'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you guys. Thank you, Z, as well. This is FPL Tips alongside Z signing off. Cheers.
Cheers.